Yes, thank you. Hope you can hear me. Good afternoon. And thank you, the BKR organizers, for having us today, despite remotely. So this presentation is meant to share with you indeed the preliminary results of a joint collaboration between, as you can see, the African Studies Centre Library of Leiden, and more precisely, information specialist Ursula Oberst, and myself, thanks to 3 years NWO research project that have been recently granted. Now, for a while, so to speak, Ursula Oberst and myself, we have tried to literally unpack and link a collection of Swahili Muslim printed books, or better say, booklets. Now, when it comes to Swahili literary productions or Swahili texts, so to speak, we may quickly think of East Africa, Tukua, but in fact, the geography at play is way bigger. So let me show you something. Next slide, please. Yeah, here you can see basically a map of the so-called East Africa Indian Ocean, the area we are particularly interested into. So we move from Europe to elsewhere, so to speak. And you can see how indeed the Swahili coast, so the Eastern African coast, has had a long-standing history of transoceanic Islamic connections, right? So beyond trade routes and beyond monsoon routes, so to speak, with the arrival of print as a medium has changed also those kind of transoceanic connection. More precisely, from the 30s onwards, so 1930s onwards, portable booklets in Swahili, cheaply printed in India, with forward writers located in Cairo, were sold almost for free in East Africa, mainly Mombasa, and became the traveling medium of the modern time. Now, despite the importance in negotiating new ways of being Muslim in the modern world, the circulation of this specific kind of text and content, have never been comprehensively studied. A real gap that our project aims to fill. Next slide, please. So in order to fill that gap, the departure has been, interestingly enough, Leiden University Libraries and the special collection stored there, a collection made of 935 printed booklets from indeed Eastern Africa. And the collection was commissioned by the International Institute for the Study of Islam in the Modern World, purchased by Gerard van Brunest, working at the ESC Library, and inventorized by Chike Vlasma. Now, as you can see from the compiled inventory list that so far we have at our disposal, the collection includes 835 titles in Swahili and also a fair number of works in Arabic language. During preliminary archival research that I started conducting at the special collection, of course, I also understood the reason why conducting such a kind of research was so urgent, given the state of the material as such, that is literally disintegrating, as you can see probably from these yellowish pages and book spines on the side. We also realized something else. Probably Ursula would like just to join in briefly.
Yes. The slide on the slide depicts the first record of the printed inventory of the Swahili booklet collection, and the printed inventory actually contains more information on each book than the records in the library catalog. Library catalog only contains a formal description of the booklets, whereas the paper inventory also contains information on its content and acquisition. So the project also aims to enrich the library catalog with the content information from the written inventory to improve the findability of the booklets. Yes. Next slide, please.
Yeah, no, let's go back. There are just a few, exactly, thank you. Here we still have indeed two examples that probably concretely speaking could show you these transoceanic connections we are so much talking about, and we try to visualize first and foremost through the map earlier on. The first example is an Arabic prayers booklet, interestingly enough, published in Singapore, distributed locally in East Africa via the publisher in Kenya, known as Haji Mohammed and Sons. And the second example is also a very particular one. It's about an Arabic grammar in English, originally published in Cairo and locally distributed again in Kenya, Mombasa, by or via the Siddiq Mubarak and Sons. Next slide, please. Yeah, in a way, during these preliminary cover research, it became clear to me, to start to think about a way to visualize patterns of text production. So my recurring question were, okay, who are the most recurring authors, publishers? Where were texts produced, printed? Which are recurring genres and formats? So this has led indeed to the major question that Ursula and myself are trying to work on today, how to analyze patterns of text production through linked open data analysis, so to speak. So we envisioned, in order to answer to this question, 3 phases project, so to speak, breaking into a phase 1 made of indeed data cleaning and enrichment of the corpus already at our disposal, digitization scheduled in phase 2, and a data linking phase. Data linking in which sense, you might ask us. The idea is in principle to link these collections stored in Leiden with a private collection of a living writer and poet from Kenya that will be digitized through other funds, the UCLA Library funds supported by the MEA program, a program that probably you're already familiar with, the so-called Modern Endangered Archive program that indeed aims to preserve digital heritage around the world. Next slide, please.
Yeah. The graphics on the screen present some preliminary results from phase 1. The data was cleaned up and enriched by a student assistant. The graphics already show some interesting relational patterns. For example, the main recurring places of publication, Mombasa and Dar es Salaam, the main recurring author, Abdullah Saleh Farsi, a Tanzanian poet and scholar. But the graphics also unveil that the second cleanup round by a scholar is necessary who is more familiar with the content of the booklets. For example, H.O. Adams and Sons and Adam Traders are 2 different designations for the same publishing house. There are also interesting facts that are not visible in the data. Many booklets are giveaway books. They are for free. This is mentioned on the book with the Swahili word bure, but not in the data. If one considers the free giveaway books, the graphic on the distribution by price will, for example, change considerably. Next slide, please. After the second cleanup round, the project intends to publish the data in a linked open metadata repository. We still have to decide whether to use Wikidata or Wikibase Cloud. Wikibase is the software behind Wikidata. Wikimedia Deutschland developed a more user-friendly version of Wikibase, which is Wikibase Cloud. Wikibase Cloud is still in a closed beta version, but one can apply for early access. And we recently received an invitation code to set up our first Wikibase Cloud instance. By the way, the Royal Dutch Library thoroughly documented how they set up their Wikibase test instance at the beginning of the summer. So their documentation very much helped me to start setting up our own test instance. And you will find their documentation on the WikiCloud website under documentation. But back to our project. The project will include the data in Wikidata or Wikibase Cloud in order to broaden visibility of the data and to make use of Wikidata's strengths, its capability to answer complex questions, present the research results visually, and to connect to other databases and collections of information. The slide shows a simplified example. On the left-hand side, you can see the Wikidata record of a publication written by Abdullah Farsi. The picture on the right side depicts a search in the Wikidata query service for publications of Abdullah Farsi. Last result, 2 publications in 2 different collections, Leiden University and Bayreuth University. Next slide, please.
Yes, and as you might have perceived already from a couple of slides earlier on, these kind of research intends to, in a way, go beyond distant reading methods like those envisioned by Franco Moretti or Pasquale Casanova, and rather wants to combine linked open data analysis with ethnographic field research. So in a way, it envisions to share the data that up till now are simply stored in the library catalog with the Swahili local publishers, such as indeed the elderly faces and people whom you are seeing now at the screen. So Haji Muhammad and Sons or the Adam Traders. What for? Well, on one side, we would like to do that in order to follow up those patterns of production to specific living archives still existing in East Africa. Secondly, we would like to enrich the corpus because it may be likely that there are, in a way, a huge amount of booklets that have not been purchased and so are missing in our preliminary corpus. And thirdly, most importantly, also in order to better understand transoceanic links that we cannot only infer indeed from the historical corpus of booklets alone. So that being said, and reaching our conclusions, a final very desideratum of this project is indeed, next slide please, sorry. Forgot to say that. The very final desideratum of this project is also to connect the data of the Swahili booklets in Leiden, so to speak, with the metadata of the private collection of Kenyan poet and Imam Ustad Mao from Kenya, Lamu Island, which, as I said before, will be preserved and digitized thanks to the Modern Endangered Archive program supported by the UCLA Library. For those who would like to know more, we will be copying and paste with you a few links about the Ustad Mao Swahili Muslim Library project as well, and what has been already created also via Wikidata. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.